Everything we do is going to be about winning. Okay, we're going to learn to do things the right way, and that's the only way we're going to do them. Because if it doesn't help us, we're not doing it, man. That's just as simple as it gets. Win the Super Bowl.
That's
I
good.
mean it too. You know, one of the things that the only reason you become a head coach in this league, in my opinion, is to win. That's it. That's the bottom line. If you do it for any other reason, you're wrong.
Hey football fans, welcome to the Washington Command Center. So, we came to Dallas dressed in all black to play the villains, but the refs banded together to save Dallas. Now, we as Commanders fans need to band together and make sure these refs are held accountable in this new era of Washington football. Make this an era where this proud franchise can at least command a fair game. And what better way to kick off this new era than subscribing here to the first, the real, the OG Washington Command Center, so you can find your way back to some of the most opinionated and ice-cold calculated takes on all things Washington Commanders. While you're at it, ring that bell, hit that like button. It's free to do, and it means a lot. I know that we did not play great football in Dallas. I'm not arguing that. But I would say that fans are being harsher on the team than they should be. You know, I don't think they're putting the blame for the loss where it needs to go. I think Scott Turner, Carson Wentz, and especially Jack Del Rio are all being vastly over-criticized by this fan base. Right now, Scott and Carson are basically competing in a straitjacket in leg irons because of the performance they're getting from this offensive line. We've seen flashes of what can be done when the offensive line holds up their end of the bargain. Before we lost Schweitzer and Woulier, Scott was calling one of the most dynamic offenses in the NFL, and Carson was a top 5 quarterback, top 3 in yards and touchdowns. The blows to the offensive line are the root for everything that's wrong with our team. And they are such substantial losses that they bring everything else down around them. And they can't simply be game planned away any more than is already being done. Maybe something can be said about Ron's sense of urgency, or the personnel department maybe not doing enough to remedy the situation. But that's all a lot more complicated than it seems, and the right people are not being blamed here. With all that said, I believe that this team did more than enough to overcome those personnel woes in Dallas. I think we saw the team band together and do enough that we should have quite easily come away with a win on the road in Dallas's house. But that brings me to what I believe was the true cause for this week's loss. And, you know, even to a much lesser extent, last week's. That's kind of what came down to, you know, the game last week. You know, one of the great things about the NFL and the way it's set up compared to other sports is the parity. The fact that, you know, we have things like the draft order, salary cap, and free agency to ensure that the league is set up in a way that everyone has an equal shot at being a winner. Staff choices, coaching, player evaluation, teamwork, game plan implementation, and talent all add up to make the margins between winning and losing razor thin. This leads to the old adage of any given Sunday being proven in one game or another just about every week. I mean, just last weekend, we saw an awful Colts team topple a team probably bound for the AFC Championship in the Chiefs. We saw a Jaguar team that gave us our lone victory destroyed. We saw them destroy off-season darlings, the Los Angeles Chargers. Anything can happen in the NFL. And it's a tall task to beat any team. With that said, it is absolutely impossible to win when the officials, through any set of circumstances, are not only catching every penalty you commit, some ridiculously minor, but at the same time, they are missing far more blatant offenses by your opponents. One or two drive ending or drive extending penalties can completely change the outcome of a game. And honestly, even though that could be massively impactful, one or two could be chalked up as mistakes. Any more than that borders on complete incompetence from the officials. But what we saw in Dallas, in my personal opinion, was neither of those things. It wasn't a couple simple mistakes or complete incompetence. The frequency, timing, and maddening lopsidedness of the calls, or lack thereof, made it clear that the officials had a stake in the outcome of this game, heavily in favor of the home team Dallas Cowboys. It was so blatant, I can't understand how any Washington fan can be talking about anything else. I mean, I know we are completely programmed by the national media and even our local beat reporters that are supposed to support the team that all trash our own guys. We're pre-programmed to trash our own guys and hurl blame at the pre-approved targets. Owner, quarterback, coach. Every loss. Owner, quarterback, coach. We're programmed to do that with every loss. But we need to look at this officiating. Be honest. Have you ever in your life seen such blatant one-sided officiating? It had, with the precision it had, and in such clear contradiction in similar situations. I'm not saying we didn't commit penalties. I'm not saying we didn't do that. I mean, quite a few were so minor that they wouldn't have been called in 90% of games. But the lopsidedness is clear, and it needs to be explained. Someone has to be accountable. The fact that the refs were calling penalties against us that completely ended drives and momentum, only to ignore more egregious cases soon after that extended drives for Dallas, calls for more attention. If not, a legitimate investigation. I mean, without even going through the full game and combing over every snap, there's really egregious ones I'm sure sticking out in everybody's memories. But you can get several examples just going over the highlights of the game. And still get a pretty clear picture of the complete bias the officials had for Dallas. Just The NFL released the highlights. Go watch those, and you'll see a lot of these I'm going to talk about here. With 3 minutes left in the first quarter, on 3rd and 15, 40 yards down the field on a sideline pass, Anthony Brown turns around and begins jamming Terry McLaurin, slowing down his speed, keeping him from reaching the ball. Brown was in no way playing for the ball. He just turned around and started jamming Terry. No call on what should have been a drive extending play. And something that could have been a massive spark for this offense. And would have almost 40 yards down the field, it would have almost guaranteed at least 3 points on that drive. Instead, it ended up as a punt. Now, this was horrible by itself. But what makes it worse is in that, next drive from Dallas, William Jackson III reaches out far less blatantly, with far less impact on the play, reaches out and uses the wide receiver's shoulder to get himself turned around to run with the player. Yes, it's ticky-tacky, but it could be, a flag. So they throw the flag. My problem is going from the Terry McLaurin play, not drawing a flag at the worst possible time for us, to that is ridiculous. And if that was all that it was throughout the game, that would just be all they missed one kind of thing. But it was way too common. 2 minutes, 14 seconds left in the first, on a 1st and 10. Deron Payne is held on what ends up being a first down pickup from CeeDee Lamb. Very blatantly held. Should have been a 1st and 20. They just completely ignored holding all game long. 11 minutes and 44 seconds left in the second on 3rd and 11. Dallas linebacker Anthony Barr bear hugs Logan Thomas trying to come across the middle. No calls. That would have been a drive extending penalty for us. 5 minutes, 22 seconds left in the second quarter on a 3rd and 8. Sweat and Obata are both held on what looked like a likely sack from Obata. If he'd have got that sack, it would have made it 4th and 10, or with the penalty, it would have been 3rd and 18. Either way, instead of we got a no call that turned into a 15-yard first down from Gallup. So 2 minutes and 38 seconds left in the second round, or second quarter. 2nd and 4. Montez Sweat is blatantly held after beating tight end Dalton Schultz. Montez burst in the backfield on what would have been an at least 3-yard loss. Going in 3rd down, they would have lost 3 more yards. Or with a penalty that would have made it 2nd and 14. No call. On that same play, Cole Holcomb's being held by Zach Martin. No call for either of them. They just, let Dallas pick up the yards there. There was a complete no call on roughing the kicker where Dallas completely annihilates Joey Sly well after the ball is gone. That should have been a fresh set of downs type of penalty. They didn't just, run into him. They roughed him. They annihilated him. So, completely ignored that, and that's as clean as you can get. That's as clear as you can get. There's no way to mistake that. Like, he got annihilated after that. There was a series in the first half where we get the ball back with the lead, and we've got a chance to add to the lead before the half, only to have the drive stalled by that intentional grounding call on Carson, who was nearly on the sideline. Now, yes, maybe his pass, it's ticky-tacky about how far his pass went, but that killed the momentum of the drive, and it resulted in a punt. I don't know if it was the direct next drive, but it was definitely shortly after that. Dallas ended up inside their own 10. Okay? Cooper Rush drops back inside their 5, and there is a sack imminent, and Rush grounds the ball. He was still inside his tackles, and that ball was well behind the line of scrimmage. And it wasn't intended for a pass catcher. He wasn't throwing it at anybody. He was about to be sacked. He got rid of the ball. It did not make it past the line, and he was still inside the tackles. No call on the same situation that killed our drive the drive before. The refs no called on what would have been a massive, pass interference call. Then 2 minutes and 14 seconds left in the first, Deron Payne is held on, I'm sorry, repeating there. I'm repeating there. 14 minutes and 10 seconds left in the third. And it's a 2nd and 12. Micah Parsons gets matched up on Terry McLaurin. Micah reaches out, pulls Terry McLaurin's arm down when Terry comes out of his break, and then runs into the back of his legs and tangles him up, causing Terry to stumble, before the ball gets there. Now, they might have looked at it as incidental context because they got tangled up, but he clearly reaches out, grabs Terry's shoulder, and pulls his arm down. Far worse than what William Jackson III had previously been called for. A much bigger man reaching out, grabbing hold of the arm of a receiver, pulling down on it, and using it to get himself into place to such a point that he runs up Terry's back. No call. That was 2nd and 12. That should have been a first down. 7 minutes and 57 seconds left in the fourth. 4th and 15. Diggs hooks Terry's waist as he blows by him into the end zone. No call. That should have gave us 4 more chances, from the 1 to get a touchdown. Clear no call. He reaches out, hooks Terry's waist to get himself turned around so that he can stick with Terry and, to slow Terry down. No call. 48 seconds left in the third. Dalton Schultz, handful of jersey, outside the shoulders, pushing and pulling and twisting Efe Abada all around. No call. There's a lot more than these examples. These are just from the highlight that was posted. There's a lot more than this if you go back through the whole game. This is just from the highlight clip. You can see this in what the NFL deemed as, highlight-worthy plays where there was this trash from the officials going on. But I think there's enough here for you to get the message. And I know that there are problems with the product on the field. But I think it's pretty clear that the team didn't lose this game on their own merits. I think us fans need to do our part, and we need to support the team after this. Maybe if enough of us shout loudly enough, we can bring enough attention that we don't have to worry about something like this again. And when our team is struggling, but they manage to soldier on and do enough to win a game, some of these close ones swing our way. Like I said earlier in the video, the margins are thin in the NFL between winning and losing. And maybe our voice and our pressure can keep NFL officials on their toes to call fair games in this new era of Washington football. Making this an era where we don't have to beat the refs too. There is no better way to kick off this new era than subscribing here to the Washington Command Center so you can find your way back to some of the most opinionated and ice-cold calculated takes on all things Washington Commanders. Remember to hit that like button, ring that bell, and if you stayed this long, I love y'all. Peace.